Some things were never meant to be shared. In a world that constantly pressures you to speak, post, and share every moment, there's a rare kind of strength in keeping certain things to yourself. Not out of fear, not because you're hiding, but because you're protecting something sacred, your future, your peace, your purpose. When you share too much too soon, you open a door that can't always be closed. Not everyone deserves access to the deepest parts of you, and not everyone who listens has good intentions. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is hand someone your truth before they've proven they can carry it with care, because the truth is, not everyone claps when you win. Not everyone feels joy when you grow. Some people will use your words to measure you, even to harm you. That's why God gives you wisdom. That's why he nudges your heart when it's time to speak and when it's time to stay silent. You see, silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's discernment. It's spiritual maturity. In silence, you hear better. In silence, you see clearer. And in silence, you guard the treasures that God placed inside you. The enemy thrives on what you expose. What he hears, he can twist. What he sees, he can attack. But what you keep between you and God becomes untouchable, unshakable, powerful. That's why some doors in your life remain unopened. Not because you're unworthy, but because God is still teaching you the power of privacy. He's showing you that before he blesses you in public, you must be faithful in private. Or before he gives you more, he wants to see if you can carry what you already have, quietly. Your next level depends on your ability to listen to that quiet voice within, the one that says, don't say it, even when your emotions beg for release, even when your pride wants to prove something, even when the silence feels lonely, because true strength isn't found in what you say, it's in what you don't say, what you choose to hold back, what you choose to surrender to God instead of handing it to people who can't handle it. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, then you already know. Your silence would have been cheaper than your healing. But don't let that pain harden you. Let it awaken you. Let it make you wise. Because your words are seeds. And when you plant them in the wrong soil, they don't grow, they rot. They become weapons in the hands of people who were never meant to carry your truth. So pause for a moment. Breathe. Ask yourself, why am I about to share this? Is it for healing? Or validation? Is it because I trust them or because I'm afraid to sit in silence with God? The answers will surprise you. Because sometimes we speak from fear, from a need to be seen, from a desire to be understood. But when you're anchored in God, you stop needing everyone's understanding. You stop needing applause. You stop explaining yourself to people who were never assigned to your destiny in the first place. You become silent, focused, strong. And that strength, it protects your mind, your heart, your vision. It keeps your energy clean and your path uncluttered. That's the reward of discipline. That's the piece of choosing to listen to God more than you listen to the noise around you. Because the more you grow, the less you talk. Not because you have less to say, but because you finally know what's too valuable to give away. So if you've ever been misunderstood, misjudged, or misused because of your own honesty, let this be your turning point. Let this be the moment you stop handing out pieces of yourself like loose change. You are not for public consumption. You are a temple, a vessel of purpose, and some things are between you and God, period. And here's the truth. When you honor that divine boundary, life changes. Your peace multiplies, your focus sharpens, and people begin to feel your presence, even when you say nothing. That's when you know you're walking in spiritual power, not just talking about it. Stay until the end. Because there are 5 things God never wanted you to share. And if you protect them, you'll step into a new level of strength, clarity, and divine favor that no one can take from you. That's why the wisest thing you can do right now is protect your voice, guard your spirit, and trust that not everything needs to be said to be real. Some of the most powerful people you'll ever meet are not loud. They don't broadcast every move, or they don't explain every choice. They walk in silence because they've learned that peace doesn't come from being heard. It comes from being anchored. There's a reason God tells you to be slow to speak. Not because your words don't matter, but because they matter so much that you can't afford to waste them. Every word you speak carries energy, direction, impact. And when you give too many of those words away, especially to people who don't value them, you end up drained, confused, off track. But when you learn to speak with intention, to hold back what the world demands and only release what aligns with God's purpose, you gain a different kind of strength, a supernatural discipline. That's what separates the chosen from the average. The chosen understand that secrecy is not isolation, it's insulation. You're not cutting people off, you're cutting off distractions. You're not hiding, you're preserving. Because once something sacred is spoken out loud in the wrong space, it becomes vulnerable. Opinions start to shape it. Doubt starts to poison it. And suddenly, what was once a powerful vision becomes just another topic of conversation for people who were never called to understand it. That's why you must never share your next move too soon. Vision is delicate in its early stages. It needs silence to grow. It needs protection, not exposure. When you share your dreams prematurely, you give others the chance to shrink them in your mind. You allow their fears, their limitations, and their disbelief to contaminate something God gave only to you. And let's be honest, people aren't always against you, but they often speak from their own fear, their own failure, their own past. So they advise you based on what they couldn't do, not what God can do through you. And that's where many people lose their blessing. Not because God didn't intend it for them, but because they handed it over to someone else before it had the chance to manifest. Be still, be private, be faithful. Your actions will speak when the time is right, and those who once doubted you will be silenced by the results they cannot deny. Then there's your weakness. The struggles you carry, the parts of you that feel raw, broken, and still healing. You have every right to feel, to process. But not everyone deserves a front row seat to that process. Vulnerability is powerful, but only when it's given wisely. When you hand your wounds to people who aren't equipped to help you heal, you risk being reopened in places that were just beginning to scar over. Yes, there are people who care, but there are also people who collect your pain like ammunition, not to help, not to support, but to store it until they can use it again. Pour out your heart in His presence. Cry in private. Rage in prayer. That's where the true healing begins, not in group chats, not in social media confessions, but in that quiet space where your soul meets the one who sees it all and judges none. And when it comes to the good you do, the charity, the kindness, the favor, you don't need to announce it. You don't need to post it. You don't need the world to see what heaven already records. When you give and expect nothing in return, not even recognition, you step into a realm of spiritual abundance most people never reach. Because real power moves in silence. It gives in secret. It grows in the shadows before it shines in the light. So let the world talk. Let them guess. Let them wonder how you're so calm, so focused, so blessed. That's the fruit of obedience. Or that's the result of choosing God's way over the world's noise. And it's only the beginning. Because the moment you start honoring what you don't say as much as what you do, everything shifts. Your relationships become clearer. Your path becomes smoother. Your spirit becomes stronger. You begin to realize not everyone deserves to know you deeply. Not everyone has earned access to your journey. And the ones who truly care, they'll respect the parts of you you choose to keep private. When you move in silence, you create space for God to move loudly. And when He speaks, no one can deny it. So let Him handle the explanations. Let Him deal with the critics. Let Him validate your choices. Your only job is to stay grounded, to protect what's sacred, to speak only when heaven gives the green light. Because silence, when led by God, is not emptiness. It is strategy. It is strength. It is spiritual warfare in its highest form, and it wins battles long before they ever reach the surface. And when you finally begin to understand the power of what's unsaid, you start walking with a different kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that isn't fueled by validation, the kind that doesn't crumble when people misunderstand you. Because deep down, you know your assignment wasn't given to a crowd, it was given to you. And it's not up for debate. It's not a group decision, it's divine instruction, and that kind of clarity doesn't need approval, it needs obedience. There's a spiritual maturity that comes when you stop oversharing and start listening more. Not just listening to people, but listening to God. Listening to that quiet voice that speaks in moments of stillness. That nudge in your spirit that tells you, don't share that yet. Don't trust them with that piece of you. Wait. And every time you obey that voice, You build a stronger wall around your purpose. You build spiritual muscle. Because holding back when your flesh wants to speak, that's power, that's growth, that's wisdom in motion. People often think silence is weakness, that being private means you're hiding something. But you're not hiding, you're protecting, you're guarding your energy, you're controlling the access people have to you. And that's not selfish, it's sacred. You are not required to explain your healing. You are not obligated to justify your peace. You do not owe your next step to anyone who hasn't walked the hard miles with you in the dark. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. Your life is not a performance. It's a calling. And callings come with weight, with responsibility, with seasons of quiet when God is shaping you in secret. Don't rush to reveal what he's still developing. Don't expose what he's still molding. Because premature exposure leads to premature destruction. And some attacks only come when your enemy knows where to strike. There is power in mystery. There is authority in restraint. And when you master the art of not revealing everything, your pain, your plans, your growth, you become untouchable in a way that the enemy cannot trace. Because now he can't manipulate what he can't see. He can't destroy what you've covered in prayer. He can't dismantle what's hidden in obedience. So hold your tongue when you feel the urge to prove something. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You don't need to argue for your dream. The calling on your life will speak for itself loudly when the fruit starts to show. The ones who once doubted will have no choice but to witness what happens when someone trusts God over noise, over opinions, over pressure. Keep your peace sacred. Keep your vision protected. Keep your heart guarded. Because the enemy doesn't always come roaring. Sometimes he comes listening. And the moment you open up your deepest truths to the wrong ears, you've handed him a blueprint to distract, delay, and dismantle what God was building in you. You can't afford that. Some things aren't meant to be shared, they're meant to be stewarded. You don't speak them, you live them, quietly, diligently, in faith. You don't need loud declarations. You need quiet discipline. You don't need everyone to cheer for your process. You need consistency when no one's watching. And you need the strength to keep going when no one understands why you're still standing. Because this journey isn't about being understood, it's about being aligned with God, aligned with purpose, aligned with your inner peace. And alignment doesn't always look impressive to people, but it moves mountains in the unseen. It unlocks doors no man can shut. It positions you for favor you never had to beg for. So release the need to explain. Release the need to defend. Let silence be your weapon. Let discipline be your language. Let God do the talking through the way he elevates you without announcement. Because when he lifts you, it won't be subtle. It will be undeniable. But until then, stay low. Stay hidden. Stay focused. That's where the real power grows. In the quiet places nobody sees. And when the time comes, when the promise unfolds, when the breakthrough arrives, there won't be a need to say a word. Your life will testify. Your peace will be loud. Your growth will shine without effort. And those who wondered, those who questioned, those who counted you out, they'll see with their own eyes that obedience speaks louder than anything you could have said. So protect your promise. Shield your vision. Hold your silence like a sword. Because the less you tell, the more you grow. The more you listen, the more you hear. And the more you trust God's timing over people's pressure, the more unstoppable you become. And when your life starts speaking louder than your words ever could, that's when you know you've tapped into something sacred. You've reached a level where your presence carries weight, even in silence. You're no longer moved by noise because you've become rooted in truth. The kind of truth that doesn't shift with trends or bend under pressure. It stands, it endures, and it shines, even when hidden. This is where strength is forged, not in what you broadcast, but in what you bear quietly, in what you carry without needing applause, in what you endure without needing sympathy. Because you understand something deeper now. Not everyone deserves access to your process. Not everyone is qualified to carry your truth. And not everyone who asks should receive an answer. The most dangerous thing you can do is open your mouth when your spirit is still healing. Vulnerability in the wrong environment is not bravery. It's exposure. You've got to be wise. You've got to know the weight of your words and the worth of your journey. People don't always listen to understand. Sometimes they listen to compare, Sometimes they listen to judge. Sometimes they listen just to use it against you later. That's why God said never tell certain things, because some things are meant to be kept between you and Him. Not because they're shameful, but because they're sacred. Not because you're hiding, but because you're growing. And growth doesn't always look like sharing. It looks like holding, guarding, protecting, until the fruit is undeniable. There's a deep power in walking in quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't flinch when misunderstood. The kind that doesn't shrink when overlooked. Because when you know who you are, when you know who you belong to, when you trust what's inside you, no external noise can shake your foundation. Your value isn't up for discussion. Your future isn't open for debate. Let people wonder why you're so silent. Let them misread your calm. Let them assume what they want. Because what they can't see, they can't control. And what they can't predict, they can't prepare for. You are not obligated to make your path obvious. You are not required to lay out your steps for anyone's approval. This journey is not a public performance. It's a divine assignment. Keep your heart soft, but your boundaries firm. Be loving, but not naive. Give grace, but don't hand over your power. There's a difference between being open and being exposed. And too many people confuse connection with access. Just because someone is close doesn't mean they're trustworthy. Just because they smile doesn't mean they're safe. Discernment is your shield. It's the spiritual muscle that helps you know when to speak and when to stay silent, when to share and when to hold back, when to walk away without explanation and trust that peace is the only closure you need. That's the kind of wisdom that protects your energy. That's the kind of clarity that preserves your destiny. You don't owe your next move to people who didn't pray for you in your last battle. You don't owe explanations to those who watched you struggle and stayed silent. Let your next chapter be unreadable to those who only knew your pain but never stood by your process. Let your silence confuse the ones who thought they had you figured out. Because every time you protect your peace, every time you hold back what the enemy could use, you're making a spiritual declaration. I trust God more than I trust validation. Let that truth echo in everything you do, in how you show up, in how you move forward, in how you protect the fire God placed in your soul. You don't need to announce what He's doing. Just walk with it, honor it, steward it. And when the time is right, the world won't hear it from your lips. They'll see it in your life. Because silence is not weakness. It's strategy. It's alignment. It's wisdom wrapped in restraint. And the more you walk in that truth, the more powerful you become. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't. Not because you proved them wrong, but because you didn't try to. You let the fruit speak. You let the favor flow. You let God be your voice. That's where transformation lives. In the quiet obedience, in the private discipline, in the sacred spaces that never needed to be shared. Keep moving, keep growing, keep guarding what matters, because the less you say, the more power your life carries. And when your life becomes the loudest voice in the room, that's when you know you chose wisdom over noise, purpose over popularity, God over everything. There comes a moment when silence no longer feels like restraint. It feels like power. You start to realize that not reacting, not explaining, not defending is not weakness. It's strength refined by experience. It's the power of self-mastery. Because the real battle is not about proving yourself to others. It's about rising above the need to. When you no longer feel the urge to be understood, you've grown. When you no longer seek validation for your pain or permission for your progress, you've broken free. Freedom begins where people-pleasing ends, and God begins to move powerfully in your life the moment you stop trying to make others comfortable with your calling. Some people can't handle your healing. They were drawn to your brokenness. They were connected to the version of you that stayed silent for the wrong reasons, not to protect peace, but to avoid conflict. Not to guard your soul, but to keep the peace in toxic spaces. But that's over now. You've stepped into a new season where silence is no longer fear. It's alignment with purpose. You don't need to post your progress. You don't need to perform your growth. Real elevation doesn't need an audience. God isn't building you in public for entertainment. He's refining you in private for impact. And what is born in privacy carries a power the world can't dilute. That's why some of your deepest breakthroughs didn't come in the spotlight. They came in silence, in surrender, in solitude. The world didn't see it, but heaven did. This is why certain things must never be spoken too soon. Because immature hands will mishandle mature revelations. Because not everyone will understand what God whispered to your heart. You don't owe anyone your strategy. You don't need to unpack your spiritual downloads to gain credibility. You are not here to be understood by the crowd. You are here to be faithful to the call. Let people talk. Let them wonder. Let them write their narratives. You're not here to correct their assumptions. You're here to stay aligned with what God told you when no one else was listening, when no one else believed, when no one else cared. That moment between you and God, that was the real beginning. And the more you protect that sacred place, the more clarity you gain. When you choose silence over retaliation, you're not surrendering the fight, you're choosing the higher war. Because not every battle is worth your breath. Not every comment deserves your energy. The enemy loves distraction. He knows if he can't destroy you, he'll try to drain you. But wisdom teaches you to disengage, to preserve your energy for what truly matters. Your calling requires clarity, and clarity comes through stillness, through discernment, through the quiet moments when you sit with your soul and listen to what God is really saying. Not what fear screams, not what pressure demands, but what truth confirms. That's the voice you follow now. That's the compass that leads you forward. And as you rise, you'll start to see that the silence you feared is actually your shield. It keeps you focused. It keeps you grounded. It protects your anointing from being diluted by public opinion. Because once you speak, you invite commentary.